Dragon's Dogma, The Beginning. Written by Ryo Mizuno. Translated English by Liz of Kutan Cosplay. Narrated by Chainsaw McFacepunch. Chapter 4. 3 days after the feast, the army led by Leonard sent out from the encampment. In that span of time, lords from every region had continued to converge at the site, troops in tow. The total forces gathered now exceeded 10,000. That morning, the dragon could be seen circling in the sky over the mountain, almost as if it knew of the coming battle. It was an ominous and yet majestic sight. Evil though it was, that figure high above held the power to rule this world. Savan remained behind to defend the encampment, as Leonard had ordered. As he saw the soldiers off on their march, their faces filled with excitement and pride, his own emotions were in turmoil. Though he hated staying behind, he could not disobey a royal order. Sald. Yes, Sald replied. It was clear from the expectant look on his face that he had already guessed at Savan's intentions. Would you go with them, in my stead? Savan asked. Of course, Arisen. Do not put yourself in danger. There's no need to fight. I ask simply that you return alive to report this situation to me. I understand, Sald bowed, then set off running after the troops now crossing the field beyond the encampment. As Savan watched him go, he added in a low voice, I am counting on you. Sald nonchalantly slipped through the ranks of soldiers and joined a row near the front, from where he had a clear view of God King Leonard and his steed. The surrounding soldiers looked perplexed at the pawn's arrival, but no one questioned him. There was no time to concern oneself with such things when a battle with the dragon was imminent. The motley army, led by lords from all across the peninsula, proceeded in an orderly manner. Before long, they reached the ancient Great Wall, which had been erected along a ridge. By ascending along this wall, they would have a straight path to the mountain's peak. The dragon was now large enough in the sky to make out the details. Its great red wings spread wide. It traced circles above the mountaintop with rhythmic precision. Halt! Leonard raised his right hand and the army stopped. Slowly, he drew his sword from its sheath and raised it above his head. Cheers erupted from the ranks. The soldiers brandished their own weapons in turn. Leonard waited for the voices to die down, then shouted his next command. Slay the worm! A second round of cheers issued, so loud that the sky itself seemed to shake. Troops rushed forth, clamoring for position. It was then that the dragon, which had been circling above, changed its trajectory. It was now descending at startling speed, aimed directly at the army below. Archers and mages, open the attack! Margrave Bower's voice rang out from nearby. Sald turned his head towards the voice and saw the Margrave on horseback, his fierce gaze riveted on the dragon. Swords alone would not always suffice when facing magical beasts. Troops wielding bows and staves had joined the ranks of the knights on this worm hunt. The dragon continued its dive, wings folded back. Chants began from mages readying spells, while bowmen notched arrows and pulled bowstrings taut until their bows were shaped like full moons. The dragon was growing larger in the sky with each second. As it opened its wings to slow its dive, the Margrave bellowed, Now! Countless arrows were loosed at once. In the same instant, arcs of lightning and orbs of fire hurled through the air. The hail of arrows and magic engulfed the dragon. It let out a roar of pain and coiled up in midair, turning away from the attack. It flapped its wings, beginning to ascend back towards the mountaintop. It flees! Shouts of triumph could be heard from all around. Not such a fearsome foe, is it? The Margrave whipped his sword through the air and turned to face the knights and soldiers who followed him. "We will charge up the great wall and fell the worm at the summit. Those who wish to share the honor, follow me!" He urged his horse forward and came to stand before the front line. "Do not be hasty in your assault," Leonard called out to Bauer as he passed. "I am well prepared, your majesty." With a bow of his head, the Margrave galloped away. What should I do? Sald thought. He wanted to follow the Margrave and witness for himself how the dragon would fight back. But at the same time, he thought he had better keep watch on Leonard. Princess Elise was with the king as well. Sald wavered for a moment, but decided to remain where he was. The king surveyed the troops as they surged past, obeying his command for a direct attack. His manner was calm as he sat astride his horse. What thoughts could be going through his mind now, with the confrontation close at hand? Sald followed the army's march at a slow pace, never straying far from Leonard. His helm was pulled low over his face, and he walked with his head down. They entered the Great Wall and climbed a stone staircase to the top. After a long trek along the wall, they reached the mountain's summit. Before them was a vast crater. It was packed with soldiers surrounding a tower which stood at the center. At the top of the tower perched the dragon, looking down at the surrounding humans composedly. It stretched its neck up to the sky, then turned its head and let out a long roar. As if on cue, creatures began to swarm out of the nearby fortress ruins and the crevices of the crater. Goblins. Sald squinted. The humanoid monsters often gathered along roads and near villages. On the heels of the goblins followed a flock of white-feathered beasts, filling the sky. Snow harpies, Sald grimaced, remembering how he had been caught off guard and put to sleep. Unease began to ripple through the ranks of soldiers, who until now had been so assured of their victory. Where they believed they had surrounded their enemy, they now found themselves surrounded. The dragon bared its fangs as if to sneer at them, then unfurled huge wings and took flight. It circled above the tower, picking up speed, and then it dived. The arrows and magical bolts flung at it by the troops below, the dragon leveled out its dive, gliding just above their heads. A powerful gust of wind sent these lightly armored soldiers flying, while those with heavy armor were knocked off their feet. The dragon opened its mouth wide and spewed forth a burst of flame. Tightly packed as they were, those in its path were unable to escape and were incinerated where they stood. Cheers turned to screams, and bravado to fear. Such atrocity. The gruesome scene was enough to make even a pawn wish to avert his gaze. In the throes of panic, the crowd of soldiers thought only of fleeing. But the crater was packed, and there was nowhere to run. One by one, lords' banners fell and were trampled. Sald took cover behind a nearby boulder and turned to look for Leonard. The king stood silent, watching the armies of the worm hunt fall. He ignored the cries of those around him, urging him to retreat. "It seems he is waiting for something," Sald murmured. But what could the hero who had slain the dragon possibly be waiting for now, when everyone was waiting for him to save them from this dire situation? "Father!" Princess Elisa's scream pierced the air. Sald followed her gaze and saw the dragon approaching them. The men surrounding the king saw it too. They ran down the stone steps in a frenzy. Only a few knights and the princess remained by Leonard's side. The dragon landed not far from the king and extended its long neck out to him. As it opened its mouth, the remaining knights fled too. Sald held his breath. The dragon and the king stood there, ready to face off in battle. It was said that in their every meeting past, God King Leonard had defeated the dragon alone. He showed no signs of fear now. but merely regarded the massive beast in silence. The two faced each other for a long time, before Leonard finally spoke in a heavy voice. "Take her." Without thinking, Sald almost stood up. He managed to restrain himself in time. "Father?" The princess stared at the king with disbelief on her face. "Am I to be sacrificed for the dragon?" Her voice trembled. "You have been chosen." The king's words were strained. "If it will bring an end to this, I will obey, but—" "It is not my choice to make." The king raised his hand before her face, cutting her off. "Not my choice." His head drooped. "Forgive me." With those words, he turned away. Behind him, the dragon reached out with a huge claw and closed it around the princess. Seemingly beyond the point of crying out for help, she merely stretched a hand out desperately to her father's back. But he did not turn around. The dragon let out a triumphant-sounding roar and took to the sky, still holding the princess. Sald watched until the two disappeared from sight, then stood up from the cover of the stone wall. He looked at the crater once again to see the site of a massacre. The ground could scarcely be seen beneath the countless corpses of soldiers. The few with strength to spare were attempting to escape the hellish scene. An entire army annihilated. Sald shook his head and joined the few men still descending the mountain. He still needed to report to his master Savan.